There is no off season, only a non-playing season. We are here to talk about Dynasty Sleepers. It's the Audible Cecil Lammy, Sigmund Bloom, and Snorkel, Scuba, Submarine. I got it right from the
Yeah,
jump. We're going to talk about different levels of sleepers that are out there on roster, Sigmund. But first and foremost,
yeah,
jump into how you approach this subject before we get to our actual players, just how you establish these tiers.
yeah. One of the bittersweet things about playing Dynasty Fantasy Football is when you get eliminated from the playoffs, it's time to turn the bottom of your roster. And we see this at the end of the NFL season. As soon as the teams that don't make the playoffs, their season's over, they sign players to reserve future contracts because the roster expands to 90 players. Now, we might not have that luxury in our Dynasty leagues, but we do know that players that we were keeping for depth or players that we can see that the end is coming up soon, we can let them go and we can churn that bottom of the roster and get some potential seeds that could grow and bear some fruit in the future.
Yeah, bear some fruit in the future, or maybe none at all. If we go over quarterbacks first, and we're going to do this maybe a little bit differently than we've done in the past, so forgive us, please. But just starting with quarterbacks, we'll talk about every single level here. Because with quarterbacks, this is the thinnest group we're going to have. We're going to have a bunch of running backs
Yeah.
to talk about. We're going to have some wide receivers. We're going to have some tight ends that are very interesting from a dynasty perspective. Snorkel, scuba, submarine, different depths. Quarterback, there's really one guy I'm watching. Some may say Hendon Hooker, which is part of the conversation, but the times we've
Yeah.
seen Hendon Hooker, it's not great, Bob. So again, maybe that's more submarine bloom. But for me, it's Joe Milton. Like Joe
Mm-hmm.
Milton, this is the conversation around him and what he could be as he traded this offseason. And there's no Joe Milton in this draft class, that's for sure, because of his amazing talent. He's incredibly bright. Remember, he had to learn two different systems, one in Michigan, one in Tennessee. Rocket arm. Don't call him Bazooka Joe. He actually doesn't like that nickname. But for me, and there are maybe others, Bloom, we can
Sure.
discuss, but we're talking quarterbacks, it's going to be Joe Milton.
Yeah, and look, with super flex leagues becoming more common, maybe we dig a little deeper at quarterback. And Hendon Hooker is on my list. Last year, Sam Darnold was on this list, so it doesn't necessarily have to be young players. It's just players with potential opportunity. I think Malik Willis belongs on this list after what we've seen from him in
Yes.
Green
Yeah.
Bay. He has one more year on his contract. He's a snorkel. Tyrod Taylor is a snorkel because it's possible he's going to start for the Jets. And again, Superflex two quarterback leagues, he's been a top 10 fantasy quarterback. I'm not saying he'll be top 10 now, but if he's the starter, of course, we go a little bit further down the list to the scuba level. Stetson Bennett, we'll see. Matthew Stafford's going to be with the team. We'll see what their future is. But they like him. He's back with the team. Marcus Mariota is an interesting guy. He actually played really well when he got in last year. We know he has the tools. And he's not over the hill yet. And if we want to go one more level deep to the submarine, well, there's still Trey Lance. And it's possible that if he has an organization that is willing to see what he can do, because now he's been in two organizations that for whatever reason, and of course the reason probably is something not good about, I don't want to even try to come up with the potential specifics, but Dallas and San Francisco now for whatever reason don't want to play him. But if a team wants to play him, maybe they can find some of the reasons that he was the number 3 overall pick at one point.
Yeah. And with Mariota, I just go, can he get back with Chip Kelly somehow? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, why not? And Chip has grown a lot since the last time they were together, and maybe so has Marcus.
Yeah, maybe. Running back position we go, and this is where we're going to get very, very deep because there's a ton of backs at varying levels. So I'll go ahead and pick some snorkels. We can talk about
Yeah,
all levels,
sure.
Bloom, and then just kind of talk about the group as a whole. But for running backs that we're still holding out some hopes for and just need a little bit more time and opportunity, wouldn't Sean Tucker be on that list? We know Bucky Irving took over in that backfield, and Sean Tucker has flashed just a little bit when he's been out there for the Buccaneers. Any 49ers back, basically, is what we're waiting for there. I would look at Philadelphia and what they have, and even Tyrion Davis Price, who's more submarine level in this conversation, but he's definitely out there. Isaiah Davis with the Jets, one of my favorites in the pre-draft process. I believe on the All-Star road trip, I believe he was a Shrine Ball guy. Correct me if I'm wrong there. But either way, let's jump in with 2 feet
Sure.
at this running back position because there are a ton more than just the few that I brought up to discuss.
Yeah, and this is a list that is probably going to take some hits from this incredibly deep running back class in the draft. But as of right now, in February, we're talking about this, and some of these guys are going to persist in value, like Sione Vaki. Sione Vaki is the top of this list for me because of the organization he's in, because the Lions love him. And remember, they drafted him as a running back, even though he had minimal experience really for a player that you would move over to the offensive side of the ball after he was a safety. So he's got some receiving chops. And again, it's this offense. Keaton Mitchell is going to be another year removed from his catastrophic knee injury. Remember, he was looking like one of the more explosive backs in the league as a rookie. Khalil Herbert, there's some people out there who say, hey, he's good enough to start if he gets a chance. I don't
Yeah,
know
I'm
if he's
one of
going
them.
to. Yeah. Dameon Pierce is interesting, if only because if the Texans don't draft a running back, they should, then he could be the backup to Joe Mixon. And Joe Mixon didn't break down this past year, but maybe this coming year. And Bobby Slowick's running game was not a good fit for Dameon Pierce. Now, Bobby Slowick is gone. Nick Caley coming from the Rams. Maybe there'll be a better fit there for him. Let's see. You can chime in on Audric Estime and whether people should be looking for something there, or if we're going to see Denver draft a back that's going to usurp that backfield. Kenneth Gainwell is going to be a free agent. Rasheen Ali, if we're going to stay with Baltimore, another level. Rasheen Ali was one of those players. It's always interesting at final cutdowns when you see a player that is not needed, a rookie that was drafted on the third day, not fourth round. As Justice Mosqueda always said, the draft is really 4 rounds long. But if a team keeps a 5th or 6th rounder that they don't plan on playing, like Rasheen Ali, that means there's probably Ali was hurt at the end of training camp too, I believe. So there might be something there. Dylan Laube, got to remember him. He did get a chance in Las Vegas and fumbled it away. New
Yeah.
regime, maybe a new opportunity. You mentioned Philadelphia. Let's mention Will Shipley. If Gainwell leaves in free agency, he's only projected to get like 1.6 million. Why wouldn't Philly just keep him? But if they don't, it might be because they really like Will Shipley. First Matt Waldman favorite, drink Chris Brooks. Chris Brooks earned from getting nabbed, I think, from the practice squad. He earned a role in Green Bay's backfield by the end of the year.
Yep.
And don't be surprised if we find that they like him better than Marshawn Lloyd when it comes right down to it. Or Marshawn Lloyd has to show what he can do. Chris Brooks
He's
has
got to
already
stay
shown.
healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. Chris Brooks has already shown what he can do. You mentioned Sean Tucker. Let's just remember this. Sean Tucker had a game with almost 200 total yards on 17 touches. Okay. If you do that against an NFL defense, you got something. All right. So, yeah, even though he's going to probably remain the third string back this year, going all the way down to the submarine level, Cease, Cody Schrader. Hey, San Francisco, you mentioned San Francisco backs. This might be the one that got away. The Rams nabbed him whenever they tried to slide him through to the practice squad and held on. Again, when teams value roster spots greatly. I can't remember the name of the lineman. Tim Shaw, I think it was, whenever the Titans kept Tim Shaw over LeGarrette Blount because of special teams contributions or something like that. So teams agonize over these last few roster spots. So when they keep a player on their 53-man roster that they don't play, they see something. And if you watch Cody Schrader in his last year at Missouri, led the SEC in rushing. Yeah, you saw something too. And Izzy Abanaconda, I'm just going to put the spotlight on him among those San Francisco backs, because everybody, when he went over to San Francisco after the Jets basically said, we're not going to get anything out of him, said he's a perfect fit for their system. Some running backs are scheme specific. Some are scheme diverse. Abanaconda is very scheme specific, and it matches up with Kyle Shanahan's scheme.
Yeah, and I would say this for my man Marshawn Lloyd, who I absolutely love his hard charging style. It's got to hang on to the rock, got to stay healthy, and got to hold off the competition that he will have from Chris Brooks there. With certain players, and I was super high on Lloyd last year, of course, everyone knows. Here's the thing. There's a lot of the favorites that we've talked about from the past at running back bloom. Wide receiver, I'm going to give a guy like 3-4 years before he finally like disappoints me enough to be like, I'm not going to talk about him. With running back, I feel differently. Let's say, if, for example, Dylan Laube or whoever,
Right.
like when we see him and it's not great, Bob, I go, all right, well, that's a position where they should make an immediate impact. Other
True.
than Thomas Jones, I can't really remember a back that took some time to get going. And then you mentioned that draft class coming in. We're about to see 25
Yeah.
Running backs, just wave after wave of talented backs. A guy that won't be at the combine next week, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who we talked about
Right?
the Shrine Bowl recap. He's a stud, and he's going to be undrafted,
Yeah.
7th round, whatever. So, all right, the guys like a Dylan Laube or whatever, nice stories. At one point, we talked about him, maybe even a lot, maybe too much. But at running back, except for Marshawn Lloyd, I'm now in this year just being like, man, if you didn't show it, and it's been a couple years and you didn't show it, you're not going to show it.
Yeah, you're probably not gonna get that opportunity. Jeremy McNichols, he came back
Yep.
from the dead. I mean, that not to have true fantasy value, he was on the radar. But you're right, Cease. It's a young man's game. The window is small, and the window closes quickly.
Yeah, it does close quickly. Let's get to the wide receiver position here. And again, this is where I will take more time when just kind of giving, like James Prochet we'll talk about in a submarine sort of level. And at wide receiver, it just takes time to learn. I will talk about who has a player who, when he told me this, Bloom, I almost
Uh-huh.
spit out what I was drinking. Although I was in the locker room, I wasn't drinking anything. A.T. Perry has been working with the ones with Denver's offense. He didn't see the field for Denver. But A.T. Perry, hell yeah, I am not forgetting about that guy, right? Or they need a wide receiver. It's Cortland Sutton. Like, yeah, it might just be A.T. Perry, who was a practice squad guy, very unheard of, a practice squad player, and obviously a Sean Payton favorite coming from the
Right.
Saints, of course.
Right.
A.T. Perry was getting work with the ones and didn't ever get a jersey. What if he got a jersey? And he seems comfortable with the plan that Sean Payton put in front of him. So, just an example of these type of
Yeah.
guys. James Prochet, I've always liked. A.T. Perry with that size speed combination. Maybe he's another Traquan Smith where he doesn't do anything, right? But maybe he does something. And that's what this show's for. So let's get to
Sure.
wide receiver and talk about some of your favorites here.
Yeah, guys to monitor. And like you said, Cease, whatever you think of a player, pay attention to the news, pay attention to what the coaches are saying, and especially pay attention to, like you said, reps with the ones. A.T. Perry, maybe a little overlap with Michael Thomas when you look at the kind of game he has. The top of this list, and I know when we get to some of these players, and the reason we do snorkel, scuba, submarine, gotta take that slow, is
Yes.
depending on the roster size, the depth, the number of teams in your league, you might have to go deep to find someone on the free agent wire to pick them up. And there are going to be names that people will say, well, I wish. Okay, well, then consider this a buy low. Consider this, or maybe not even buy low. The top of the list of wide receivers, Jalen Coker. And Jalen Coker is not so under the radar. It was funny, Cease,
Right.
on one of the social media outlets, there was someone asked a question, who's the under the radar second year wide receiver? And Jalen Coker was the most common answer. So maybe he's not so under the radar, but maybe you can still deal with for him because he's the best downfield receiver on that team. Malik Washington, I don't
I
think
love him.
I don't think Tyreek Hill's going to get traded. Sounds like he's trying to kiss and make up, but
He was just emotional.
yeah, but either way, Tyreek Hill, year or two down the line, is probably not going to be on this team. Mike McDaniel, who may not also be coaching this team in a year or two, we'll see.
Right.
He loves Malik Washington. And if you watch Malik Washington, it's get the ball in his hands. And he's also a slot receiver extraordinaire. So PPR leagues. We're going to watch. Did you see the news, see some dating the show, that the cap is going up to what, $22 to $26 million. So maybe the Bengals might actually be able to keep Higgins and Chase at an increased cost. Should have done it last year. If you're cheap, sign the players before you have to. That's how you can actually stay cheap. Andre Yoshibus. If T. Higgins, now he's going to be tagged, but if he's tagged and traded, Yoshibus becomes the number 2 receiver for Joe Burrow. Luke McCaffrey. And as of right now, the players under contract at wide receiver for Washington in the upcoming season are Terry McLaurin and Luke McCaffrey. All right. Luke McCaffrey was a quarterback convert, got on the field. Now, if you're a quarterback convert, yes, he was a 3rd round pick, but you get on the field, that means you're developing well. He was getting on the field and creating separation. Okay. And, oh, yeah, the quarterback they drafted in that same draft last year, he ended up being pretty good. Probably increases the value of wide receivers on that team. Now, there are a lot of players that make sense for Washington in free agency. They're going to add wide receivers. They're going to draft wide receivers. But don't forget Luke McCaffrey. Of course, Jordan Whittington. It's just, and again, he's on a roster probably. For whatever reason, Dynasty fantasy players can be slow on the take. We all know that Cooper Kupp is not going to be a Ram next year, but Jordan Whittington's value will still go up the
Right.
day he is released or traded. He got a chance, and again, much like McCaffrey, Whittington ahead of the curve, getting on the field. Yeah, there were some rocky moments, but what was he, like 6th-round pick? He's getting on the field, and the team loved him. We heard almost as much about him in the offseason as we heard about Puka Nacua before his first offseason. We go down to the scuba level at wide receiver. Kayshon Boutte. Do you know at the end of the season, he was only 22 years old? And remember, he was hanging with the big dogs at LSU, and he fell in the draft. A lot of people wrote him off. He survived a couple of different regimes now in New England, and he started to come on. Now, New England's going to make some moves at wide receiver for sure, but Boutte is going to be young. He's younger than some of the guys that are going to get drafted this year. Okay. He played ahead of Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors at times at LSU, and he put up 45 for 735 and 5 touchdowns as a freshman. So maybe there's something there. Javon Baker, also in New England, didn't really get a chance. I think he's better than Jalen Polk. Malachi Corley, don't forget about him. He's another one like Lauby that fumbled away his opportunity, basically. Didn't even really fumble it, just tossed away his opportunity. Parker Washington. Christian Kirk, I think Dan Graziano reported 75% chance. Christian Kirk's due like 15, 16 million. Probably going to be released. Parker Washington didn't exactly shine in place of Christian Kirk, but has the skill set to fill that role. Going deeper now to the submarine level, Tylan Wallace made some plays downfield for the Ravens. Going to make special teams contributions. He's going to be a free agent. So watch him catch on somewhere as a 4th or 5th receiver because of the special teams contributions. But if injuries strike, he's a deep threat. You never know. Ryan Flournoy, a small school receiver for Dallas. They don't really have, and Jalen Tolbert didn't exactly pop. He put up some numbers here and there, but Flournoy has the size, speed, athleticism combination. Jalen Naylor is a legit deep threat, and he really probably should be Snorkel if you're paying attention. But Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson are there, so it's going to be hard for him to get enough targets to be consistent for fantasy football. But when he gets to his second contract, don't be surprised if we see him really come on for his next team. And on that same note, maybe even above Snorkel, floating on the surface of free agency, Darius Slayton. Darius Slayton was incredible as a rookie. He looked like he was going to be another Terry McLaurin. Well, he didn't turn out that way. But getting out of the Giants organization, look what it did for Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, it can do some good things. By the way, there's another Washington. We're going to talk about all the Washingtons, and it's Taj. If we talk about Malik Washington, who was the second receiver I wrote down behind A.T. Perry to discuss, I'll throw out some submarine, maybe like super deep sea level. You know, what are the down there where they got the creatures?
Mariana Trench.
Yes, the Marianas Trench. Yes, Taj Washington. Because when I was at the Shrine game last year, Malik Washington was the biggest stud. Taj Washington was the second. And they're both on the same damn team and a high-powered offense. So, yeah, put a pin in that.
Sure.
Let's get to the tight end position. And the tight end position is interesting because this is one kind of the anti-running back segment where it's just like, just give him time. Just give him time. You know, Julius Thomas took a couple years and he was hurt, by the way, but like these basketball converts, quarterback converts, whatever, they just take some time to get going. There's even some players, I would say, that need to start playing tight end. Johnny Wilson with the Eagles. I was like, can he just start playing tight end, please? That would be awesome. You know, I always look to Washington. And for example, and I could easily look this up, so I apologize for just doing this. But Tyree Jackson, how long has Tyree Jackson been in the league and a converted quarterback? I'm still waiting for him to be the next Logan Thomas. He's on the team where Logan Thomas was as a converted quarterback. So, you know, your Tyree Jacksons, these sort of deep sort of tight ends, you know, that's where the time comes into play, Sigmund.
Yeah.
So we're going to get deep, and we're going to get deep with guys maybe you've been waiting on and maybe sick of waiting on. But again, tight end, when you're learning essentially sometimes 3 positions,
right,
it takes some time.
And one of the lowest paid positions in the league. That's not fair. I mean, running backs need their own union. Maybe tight ends do too. Great tight end class coming in. I'm going to lead with Tanner McLaughlin. Because there's really sad news about Eric All. There was some sort of complication. He's not going to play in 2025. which it just, Eric All's one of those players, Cecil, we'll talk about, Marcus Lattimore, like these players, like, if it just wasn't for the injuries.
Right.
Now I know Eric All wouldn't necessarily have been like one of the very best in the league at his position, maybe, but the injuries are just piling up. Tanner McLaughlin, Mike Gesicki. Hey, if you're gonna pay at least 2 of Chase and Higgins and Trey Hendrickson, there ain't no money left in the cookie jar for Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki is going to follow in the footsteps of CJ Uzomah, of Hayden Hurst, not Irv Smith, and get paid after playing with Joe Burrow. This is a great, and maybe they're going to sign somebody in free agency for $2 or $3 million at tight end, and that player could be the next in line. So again, this is a starting point of a discussion. We're not saying just get these guys and only these guys, and then you can stop paying attention in the offseason. Keep paying attention as we get through free agency, as we get through the draft, as we see the different waves of additions to these teams and the news, as Cecil was saying, who's getting talked up by the coaches, who's getting snaps with the ones in OTAs. Tanner McLaughlin, a basketball convert, incredibly athletic. He's everything you want. One of the things for fantasy football, especially the tight end position, are they a blocking tight end or are they a receiving tight end? And sometimes the blocking tight ends like Will Dissly end up working out anyway for receiving, at least for a little bit before they suffer catastrophic injuries. I'll just put this out there about Tanner McLaughlin. I believe he broke Rob Gronkowski's tight end reception record at Arizona. So that's a name you like to be mentioned with.
Yes.
at the tight end position. And he gets to play with Joe Burrow. And again, you see what Joe Burrow has done for the value of these players, both in NFL and in fantasy terms. Cade Stover, remember, college teammate of one CJ Stroud. So Dalton Schultz not exactly popping there. They like Cade Stover. Watch out for him. Is it too obvious to say Noah Gray? I mean, now that we're waiting, March 15th, I guess, is the deadline, or the team wants. Isn't it going to be funny if
I'd
Travis
still say
Kelce
Jared Wiley.
or Jared Wiley, but Wiley's hurt. Wiley's
Right.
coming back from an injury. Either way, we're watching to see who the next one is. Isn't it going to be funny if Kelce takes his roster bonus and then says, I'm out? Not that he needs money, Jatavian Sanders, don't forget about him, although maybe this is a place, Carolina, where Tyler Warren ends up. By the way, as Matt Batanti put out there first, I'm going to give Matt Batanti this. This is a conversation. Souped up, rich man's Taysom Hill, Tyler Warren. All right, so just put a pin in that. We get down to the scuba
He's Dallas
level.
Clark to me, but
Sure,
by the way, that's our next week's show, the combine rumors.
Yeah. Imagine if Dallas Clark could get goal line carries. Brenton Strange, I think he had a fumble and fell out of favor with Jacksonville. I'm not even sure what is going on with Evan Ingram, honestly, where he fits in the long-term plans of this team. If we get down to the submarine level, Jaheim Bell, remember this. Yep. Jaheim Bell, he was known at Florida for his game after the catch. All right, he's an offensive weapon, still around. New England needs offensive weapons. And like you said, sees patience. And like I said earlier in the show, if a team is keeping this player on at the bottom of their roster, even though they're not playing him, they see something. Now it's a new coach. And then let's just give one more. See, like you said, some of these guys were waiting on forever. Kenny Yeboah.
I still love him.
Still love him. He was basically a wide receiver at Ole Miss. Tyler Conklin is a free agent. Jeremy Ruckert has had opportunities, hasn't really flashed. Devontae Adams is going to get released. So someone other than Garrett Wilson, who's probably going to stay with the team, is going to have to catch passes, maybe from Tyrod Taylor. Maybe it's Kenny Yeboah.
Yeah, maybe, just maybe. And I'll throw out a little love, Bloom, as we'll circle back around on some of these guys. Yeboah is definitely on my list. Bell was written down on my list, of course. Brevin Jordan, more scuba-ish, but still very talented. And some guys, because people ask, like, why aren't you talking about Lucas Krull? Well, he makes too many mental errors. Same as Felipe Franks, converted quarterback, who I saw compete at quarterback, I believe, at the Senior Bowl. So it's like Felipe Franks, I've seen too many mental errors by Lucas Krull, the best mini camp. The mini camp we'll all remember from last year.
Sean Payton, especially
Sean
when he sees you.
Yes, when he sees me at the hanging out. Anyway, we'll be hopefully hanging out in Indy having dinner, but that's for next week's rumors show.
Ooh.
Yes. But then Felipe Franks, Lucas Krull, guys like that I've given up. There's one more I have not given up, and he's only a second-year player. It's Dallin Holker.
Oh, yeah.
Dallin Holker's got a nose for the end zone, man, and it's gray hair. But the CSU product, kind of discount Trey McBride, if you will. So, I'll throw some love for Dallin Holker.
And Juwan Johnson's a free agent, and Foster
Yes.
Moreau, who I love, it's a pretty serious knee injury. I think he's gonna have surgery at the end of the season. So opportunity knocks. Taysom Hill also a serious knee injury. Opportunity knocks.
Yes, and to quote Claudio Sanchez, "When it rings, will you answer?" It's Coheed and Cambria. Anyway, guess who's listening to Coheed and Cambria all the time? That's
Sean
me.
Payton?
Yeah, maybe I can get Sean on that.
Turn him on to it.
I will. I'll try that. That's a wrap for the show, buddy. How's it feel to get our snorkel scuba submarine? I got it right both times, Bloom.
Yeah, the non-playing season is here. Join us. Let's take another trip around the calendar, around the sun together, like we love to do on the Audible.
Yes, and the hottest combine rubers we are going to have for you on next week's show. I will be in Indianapolis all week long. So boots on the ground, that's where Football Guys goes. So make sure to subscribe to our channel. We appreciate you for that. And spread the love. Share the videos. Like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. He's Sigmund Bloom. You follow him on all the socials at Sigmund Bloom. I'm at C. Salami saying thanks for watching. Stay tuned and stay frosty.